This is St. Petersburg, built over 300 years ago by Peter the Great. And it is the gateway from Europe to one of the most fascinating countries in the world, Russia. I've been enchanted by Russia and its hockey players since I was a kid. Over the decades, I've visited the country many times. And now I'm back to celebrate the hockey history we Canadians share with them. I'm Glenn Anderson, and I played in the National Hockey League for 16 years, with and against some of the greatest players to ever lace up skate. I was fortunate enough to win 6 Stanley Cups and to form friendships that have lasted ever since.
Please welcome Glenn Anderson, inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in the player category.
In 2008, I was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And the first thing I had to do was thank the players who were the most difficult to beat, the Russians.
Special. For me, the Russian players made me a better player.
Into Anderson. Juki scores!
Every time we played them, I amped up my game. Alexander Yakushev was my idol. As a kid, watching him with his peers gave me tremendous inspiration. The bigger the game, the better I played.
My time here in Russia is not just about celebrating a specific moment. It's also a journey across time, from the start of this relationship between Canadian and Russian hockey. And along the way, I'm going to discover that, like in Canada, there are hockey players everywhere.
Who's your father?
Vladimir Petrov.
My father.
Is it really?
Yeah. It was phenomenal. Did you watch him play?
Yeah.
Это реклама.
He's good.
The best.
It was great players like Maxim's father, Vladimir, who brought out the best in us in the 1972 Summit Series.
That made a wild stab force fell. Here's another shot. Right by the score! And they're done! And scored for Canada!
You guys get a card?
I'm in Moscow to celebrate what is, for millions of Canadians, the defining event in our hockey history, the 8 games of the 1972 Summit Series between the Soviet Union and Canada. Although I didn't play in 1972, I've been invited to play on an international team of former NHL stars. Now the forward lines are Crush, you're going to play the left side. Mac, you're going to be down the middle. And I'll play on the right side. And I've seemed to be stuck with some assistant coaching duties as well. So Star and Borya, you guys are going to play as a pair. But those are the lines. Any questions? I want 2 goals on the first shift. The Russian team is made up of players from several eras of Soviet hockey.
Canada, да, Soviet, нет.
The rivalry is still there, but it is a chance to still have fun and say hi to old friends. Helping with the coaching is Phil Esposito, the Boston Bruins great and star of the 1972 series. The highest scorer and the man who carried the emotional burden of the pressure from a country that expected so much from its team. For Esposito and the other NHL stars, it was the first time our professionals had met the best Soviet players. For decades, only amateurs were allowed to compete against the Soviets at the World Championship. And so everyone in Canada expected their team to demolish the Soviets, who had never been on the ice against the NHL's best. Some thought the scores could be as high as 20-0. But it didn't turn out to be the walkover everyone expected. There was only one man on the 1972 team who knew what the Soviets were capable of: the general manager and coach, Harry Sinden. He was also in charge of the Boston Bruins. Sinden had been captain of the 1958 Whitby Dunlops, one of the handful of Canadian amateur teams to win back the World Championships from the Soviets in the 1950s and 60s. In preparation for the 72 series, Sinden sat down his team of NHL superstars to learn from a film of the Dunnies' 1958 triumph.
You know what they expected. Like, you knew who the Russians were.
Yeah, I got all the team together in 1972, and I had a film of the Whitby Dunlops winning the World Championship against the Russians, and I wanted them to see it. A total disaster, and halfway through it, I just called the whole thing up. They were all laughing at it. But I was trying to get them revved up, but went right over their head, no matter what I said, and I told them many times, you are going to be up against some very good players here. Right by them.
The first 4 matches in the 8-game series were played in Canada. We lost 2, tied 1, and won only once. Sinden saw it coming, but it took his all-star players completely by surprise.
That Russian team was just fantastic. I mean, we really, it was all people, think we let down or something. I mean, our players worked so hard. The competition was so high that they were as good as we were. So,
right.
We had trouble.
Talent-wise.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
They were in the shape we were in. They were every bit as good as we were.
One young player, a 22-year-old Philadelphia Flyers centerman, Bobby Clark, was quick to realize how talented the Soviets were, as they outplayed the Canadians.
How do you get a team with that many players, talented players, to come together?
Well, the individual skills that they had were probably far superior to ours. We didn't have Orr, who had special, and our best players were power players, big guys like Espo, who could shoot and bull his way to the net and do all those things, And they had these guys like Karlamov, who could, stick handle a puck through his feet and dance around with it and stuff. So, and lots of those guys were like that.
The Canadian team was desperate for solutions, and the nation in shock. After losing Game 4 in Vancouver, local fans booed Esposito and his teammates. It was a turning point.
We're trying. What the hell? I mean, we're doing the best we can, and they got a good team, and let's face facts. But it doesn't mean that we're not giving it our 150%, because we certainly are. And I don't think it's fair that we should be booed.
The final games were on Russia's home ice. Canada would have to win 3 out of the last 4 to win the series. The odds were against them. I was 12 years old. My parents were among the Canadian fans who went to Moscow that fateful September. It was my father's tales of the talented young Russians and Canadians that fascinated me with international hockey. And it wasn't Esposito who was my hero by the end of those 8 games. Rather, the young, exciting number 15, Alexander Yakushev. Down to 4 games back in Moscow, it was war. The stuff of legend, not just for the high level of play, but for the intensity. And some would say a loss of control for a few of the Canadian players.
I mean, you've had the same feeling I've had, is that we've got nothing to lose. And the whole team just said, look, let's go. Just play Canadian hockey and go. And that's what we did. We just turned her loose. Just everything was, it seems to fit into the Canadian mentality of the game. Right. We got all to lose. Let's get them.
How did you control the bench and keep everybody on side without, because they were yelling and screaming? You got Phil Esposito doing the throat. You got J.P. Parisi swinging a stick at the ref. I mean, these guys are going crazy.
So was I. You know, but I mean,
And Alan Eagleson running across.
yeah. I mean, I think if you really look and somebody was able to, a psychiatrist or somebody was able to analyze our behavior and the way we were behaving at that time, I think it was such a blow to our pride that these guys could play with us, that you know, that we were frustrated by it. I really do. I mean, we found out they could really play with us and maybe better.
I think all of us probably did things in that series that we wouldn't do in the NHL.
Things looked desperate, so assistant coach John Ferguson decided to light a fire under the young Bobby Clark.
He leaned over and said, someone's got to get that goddamn Karlamov.
Keeps the man short. Soviets move to the
We
attack.
kind of battled up the ice, and he kind of took a little flick with his stick, and I turned off one way, and he turned off the other. And he's going back this way, and I circled around, and I hunted him down and whacked him.
Pass back. Here's the roller in front.
We were way more aggressive hockey players than they were. They weren't shy. They used their sticks and their feet and stuff. It was all that kind of stuff, and that, of course, was foreign to us. So we went after them anyway. It was good.
Canada lost Game 5. Games 6 and 7 went to Canada. It was all up to the final, Game 8. A brutal battle. Then, with less than a minute to go, the goal. It had been dramatic beyond belief. The technically brilliant play of the Soviets made an indelible mark on Canadian hockey, and the Soviets learned that passion matters.
I think once it was over, you realize they're just hockey players. You know, you can hate them, and we were supposed to, in those days, hate communists and stuff. They weren't any more communists than we were politicians in Canada. They were just hockey players.
We're at the Goom. You gotta love this place a little bit, right? What a shopping mall. Oh my God.
I'm off to the news conference marking the 40th anniversary of the series. We all remember it like yesterday.
Boris Mikhailov and I are friends now, okay? I like Boris. It's over. Okay? Is that good?
Boris Mikhailov was the captain of the 1972 Soviet team.
Сегодня, благодаря организации встречи Минспорта, Владимира Шпутина и всех остальных, мы впервые с фильмом пожали друг другу руки. Понимаете, это уже приятно. И пожали не как соперники, а как друзья.
Good job in there. Nice. Super. Yeah, good job.
Feels good to see all of these players together. All of them now friends. I didn't have to wait 40 years for my handshake. I played against the Soviets in the 80s and the 90s, and we eventually became friends.
I was 11, 12 years old. I watched the 72 in September. So after that, my childhood idol was Yakashev. Because he played so good and he was strong. And my dream was to play against the Russians after that.
That series, those moments, made me want to be a hockey player. But the great rivalry between our countries began on a frozen pond soon after the Second World War. The Soviet Union's hockey program was created in December 1946 by Vasily Stalin, son of Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin. Vasily Stalin was determined to challenge Canada's decades-long domination of hockey. He turned to Anatoly Tarasov, not a hockey player at all, Tarasov was coach of the Soviet national soccer team. He watched films of how Canadians played that game of hockey and came up with a new strategy. For decades, Canadians had played hockey only one way. Forwards stayed forward, wingers never left their side of the ice. Defensemen stayed back, rarely, if ever, crossing the opposing blue line. Using soccer as inspiration, Tarasov wanted his team to play fluidly, as a unit across the entire ice, where they would often double back, regroup, passing between themselves until one was in perfect position to score. Canadians scoffed at the fanciness of Tarasov's system. But it didn't take long for his tactics to pay off. In 1954, only 8 years after the creation of the Soviet hockey program, they stunned Ontario's East York Lyndhurst to capture the World Championships in Stockholm on their first attempt. Tarasov's ingenious adjustments sent a shockwave through hockey and ultimately changed the game forever.
The reason the defenseman didn't know what Glennie was doing because Glennie didn't know what he was doing.
For the past 2 decades, players from the Canadian national teams of the 1960s and 70s get together to reminisce about their battles with the Soviets.
When we went down to hit the post, the Russians always take the puck after us and come back and score. That was the problem. Yeah.
This year, they're in Penticton, British Columbia, home of the Vs, the team that took back the world title from the Soviets in 1955. It was the Vs who ran straight into Tarasov's hockey machine. The Soviet players they met were a new breed of hockey animal. Unlike the Canadians who only got into shape at training camp a month before each season, the Soviets trained 11 months a year. Cross-training regimes that were decades away from being adopted in North America. Then again, as most of them were officers in the Red Army, they had little choice. The Penticton Vs realized that the political climate of the time meant that they were also Cold War warriors.
When we got there, we thought it was just a hockey game, but it was way more than that. The Cold War was on that time, there was a lot of hate, and we've come right into the center of this thing.
The key to Canadian victory was to shut down the great Bobrov, the first superstar of Soviet hockey. Until then, he had been an international soccer standout.
This guy Bobrov, this captain, who was the darling of the Russian team, what they used to do was, they used to feed him up the center. They would spring him loose, and he was a beautiful skater, and he would spring away and he would score goals.
By isolating the Soviet star player, the Canadians found a way to beat Tarasov's system.
Anyway, we come away with a 5-0 win, and that was what started the rivalry that's there today.
A poor man's made out of muscle and blood. That's my sky, sitting low.
The majority of the partygoers are from teams that came after the Penticton Vs. Sadly overpowered Canada's amateur teams that bravely faced the Soviets from the late 50s through the 60s and 70s only won 3 more world championships. The man who handpicked the Canadian teams against the Soviets after 1961 was a young priest and hockey coach at St. Michael's College in Toronto, a man who never lost faith in Canada's national hockey program. I played for him on the 1980 Canadian Olympic team. He had a profound impact on my life.
Father David Bauer, one of my mentors, was instrumental in his teachings and his philosophy. He taught me he reached so many of us in a positive way. Although he knew the game inside and out, he was more concerned with the human spirit. He had such an inner strength, and it rubbed off on me. I was blessed to have met him while he walked among us.
It was the frustration of being dominated at one world championship after another that led to the 1972 Summit Series. Finally, a chance to even the score between the best hockey players in North America, professionals, playing the so-called amateurs of the Soviet national team. Playing against the Soviets during the 1980s and 90s, and eventually becoming friends with many of them, has left an indelible mark on my life.
You didn't want my help.
As part of the 40th anniversary celebrations of the 1972 Summit Series and the 1987 Canada Cup, the Russians host what they call a master class in Red Square. Generations of Russian greats come together with a number of international players to celebrate the sport with local children. Hockey Hall of Fame member Slava Fetisov is one of the greatest defensemen to ever play the game. We played against each other through the Canada Cup in the 1980s. The 1987 final was especially exciting.
We've played you the whole series. Our line matched up against you guys all day.
You killed us.
No, you killed me. I got bruises on my arm still from back in '87.
I got a couple of hip checks.
Yeah, you got a lot of those too.
As the Soviets and Canada met in the best of three final. I was in the thick of it.
It's classic hockey, and it was great atmosphere. I remember like yesterday, I remember it was game 3. It was like this, boom, 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 boom. You sit on the bench and it's...
The Soviets won game 1, 6-5. Canada stormed back to win the final 2 matches, 6-5, 6-5. In the intervening years, Slava Fetisov has become a great friend of mine. I've come to learn about how much he struggled to break free of the Soviet system. In the late 1980s, the Soviet Union was experimenting with a policy of openness called glasnost, which tolerated open criticism of the communist system. It was a turbulent time. In 1989, during this period of upheaval, Fetisov asked the Soviet authorities if he could leave to play in North America, in the NHL. As a cultural hero, he paid the price for asking.
I went through lots of punishment, being a major of the Soviet army, being captain, and all my friends was just run away from me. And it was my wife, my family, and my wife's family. That's it. People was afraid to talk to me. People was afraid to call me, and it was disaster, you know.
Why would they punish you? What did you do?
No, because they promised me to go.
Yeah.
After Super Series we come back.
Yeah.
And they said, no, you have to play another year. And I said, no, I'm not gonna play anymore because you was lying to me.
So they lied to you.
Yeah.
Who was it? Who lied to you?
I mean, a system, but
okay.
Tikhonov was kind of spokesman for the system.
Fetisov blames Viktor Tikhonov, his coach and nemesis.
Постоянно систему унизить человека, оскорбить, поставить его в зависимость от себя и потом им крутить, как он захочет. Это, в общем, система, которая была в стране у нас при Сталине.
Ну ты мне объясни, как ты там борешься, если из-под тебя я пулемет такого здорового забиваю, блядь, вот такой квартальный.
Tikhonov coached both the Soviet national team and the Red Army Club for decades. He was a general in the Soviet military. Many of his players Red Army officers, and he ruled the team like his own private army. Fetisov was stripped of his team captaincy and relieved of his hockey duties, but he continued to resist. There was worse to come.
Beat me up in the police station.
Come on.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was big
They
punishment.
took you into the police station?
Yeah. It was lots of pressure on me, and They put pressure on my wife, on my mom, and stuff like that.
Finally, Fetisov's teammates, inspired by his example, stood up and were heard.
I said, it's called like ultimatum. They said, if Slava not go, we're not going.
Really?
Yeah, it was big shock, and they are captain. We need them, and then they called me next day. They said you should come to the training center.
He could return to the team, but there was a catch.
Big enough. He said, I not guarantee you a spot in the team. You have to fight for it. I said, okay, I'm ready.
The Soviet Union's greatest player would have to try out, as if he was a rookie. Fetisov kept insisting on leaving. He pushed Soviet officials to the limit. I had no idea what my friend endured.
When the Minister of Defense pulled you in office, I said, listen, if you're not going to take out of your mind, you go to United States, our enemy, you're going to send you to Siberia. It's Minister of Defense, it's the second most powerful guy in the country. And you're wearing a uniform with two generals beside you. Then you have to decide what to say. I said, Mr. Minister, I hope you can make the right decision and let me go to play. He didn't expect somebody can say this way to the Minister of Defense. He started screaming at me.
No way.
He said, go away, you can be sorry for yourself the rest of your life.
Wow.
And 1 month later, he let me go.
Slava Fetisov joined the New Jersey Devils in 1989 and expected to be embraced with open arms. He was in for a surprise.
And the first things, I was feel like a winner to beat the huge anti-human system to get to the most democratic part of the world. And I feel that nobody like me. Even in my dressing room, people doesn't like me. It's kind of terrible feeling. When you're young, you doesn't give a shit, you know. Put this way, you came to the National Hockey League, it was tough.
Fetisov's NHL career lasted 10 years, and he won 2 Stanley Cups. 5 years after his retirement from hockey, Fetisov got a phone call from Russia's new leader, Vladimir Putin, asking him to come home to help his homeland and fellow Russian athletes as sports minister. He is now a senator in the upper house of the Duma, the Russian parliament.
And funny enough, Putin called me back in 2002 to give me a position of the Minister of Sport. To be out of country for 13 years and
bring you back
and get this kind of responsibility, recognition.
That's huge respect, though.
Yeah.
The country gives you that respect for that because of you making the difference.
If I would do something different, I never get this kind of respect. That teach me when I was young, do whatever you do, 100%. Good things happen.
Fetisov played for the Red Army Club, which at the time was by far the strongest team in the Soviet Union. All the best players were drafted into its ranks. For decades, players from the Red Army Club made up nearly the entire Soviet national team. While visiting the arena, I make a remarkable discovery. In a tiny office hidden out of the way, I find their legendary coach, Viktor Tikhonov, who ruled the Red Army team with an iron fist from 1977 to 1996. Now in his 80s, he is in a much more nostalgic mood. Tikhonov proudly shows me the memorabilia gathered over more than half a century of Russian hockey.
A good-looking man, eh? He's a pretty good look. Yeah. Fetisov. Who's this? Kasatonov. Nice. Good picture, Bobby. Yeah.
Лучше его никто не катался.
He said that's no one better than him.
No. He's a legend.
Я думаю, что там не только где-то все играют здорово.
Everyone plays wonderful.
Второй год это если
The game that you taught was so different than the way the Canadians played, but today they almost play identical systems.
Потому что из русского хоккея очень много перешло в канадский. Потому что русский хоккей очень быстрая игра, техничная игра. И поэтому очень быстро, мало понадобилось время, чтобы хотя бы догнать канадцев.
All right, thank you very much.
Tikhonov's old Red Army team is now a professional club in the Continental Hockey League, or the KHL, formed in 2008. Back at the practice, I watch a group of players who hail from around the world, including Canadians now playing for the KHL. Darcy Verreau is from Saskatchewan. He was the first player to ever start a fight in the KHL. Teammate Alexei Yashin played 12 years in the NHL, but came home to play in the new Russian league. The KHL has already expanded to include 24 teams, from Siberia to Belarus. This is the future of Russian hockey and a potential rival to the NHL. I'm in St. Petersburg at the Ice Palace, the home of SKA, the local team and the KHL's most successful club. Every week, the team's alumni get together to have a pickup game. Of course, I had to play. The player in the gray cap is Alexei Gusarov, a defenseman who played on the Soviet teams against me in the 1980s and early 90s. Alexei was one of the players who lived in fear of Tikhonov, and he endured firsthand his coach's brutal methods.
He always stood in front of the bench, and he looked back at his team all the time, right? And he was yelling at him and saying,
He hit the guys from the behind. He stayed behind and used the knee to hit the guy right here.
Yeah.
One day we played in St. Louis, it's 1985.
Yeah.
And my mistake, we had the goal.
Right.
It was middle of the first period. An entire game, he just hit me from the behind.
Okay. No way.
You're doing. Really think about what you're doing and blah, blah, blah. All game.
No
it was
way.
most ridiculous game in my life.
Oh my God.
After the fall of the Soviet Union, Tikhonov was eventually replaced. Players like Alexei Gusarov and Slava Fetisov left to play in the NHL. Russian hockey fell into an uncertain time, underfunded and left to languish, while soccer rose to prominence. It took the concerted effort of billionaires like Alexander Medvedev to bring back Russian hockey. Here, the chairman of the Russian oil and gas giant Gazprom Export captains a team of SKA All-Stars against a dream team of former Soviet greats.
What's today? It's the anniversary of the 65 years. And what's the significance of playing here in St. Petersburg? It's a big hockey town, right? All right, great.
Medvedev believes hockey is important to Russia, connecting the nation with its proud history. That's part of why he founded the KHL 4 years ago.
It's not a Cold War anymore, but still, to be the best, and it's important. And when you see the flag of your country waving after the win, it's very good.
The biggest thrill for me on this day is that I get to play against my childhood idol, Alexander Yakashev. He was the highest scoring Soviet player in the 1972 Summit Series. And now, I get to meet him.
You still got it. You can still play. Like, unbelievable. That's good for you. That was, oh, yeah, of course. He can still play the game as better as ever. And my hero still can play. I love it. He's just the best.
Скажи, не дождется. He says it's going to be way too long before he can.
No. Okay, good.
It's a big night, a gala to mark 65 years of Russian hockey, since Vasily Stalin put the Soviet Union's first team on the ice back in 1946. Everyone's here, From the stars of the 60s who faced Father Bauer's teams to the greats of the 72 Summit Series. Even those I played against in the 80s and 90s. It's a who's who of Russian hockey, a celebration of everyone who's been part of their game since the beginning.
Tretiak and Yakashev. You gotta believe that. Tretiak and Yakashev here in the same building, that's unbelievable. And here we are.
It's a lot of fun, although there's something else going on here. The old guard of the Russian Hockey Federation continues to look back at its glorious past. But Alexander Medvedev does not.
After not performing in our, this bastard came to our game and playing like that. That's it. Because he had the two other games ahead of him. But it was fun, yes?
For Medvedev, Soviet history is far behind them now. He believes Russian hockey must join the 21st century. It's hockey night in St. Petersburg. It's here that we can see how Alexander Medvedev and the KHL are making Russian hockey part of the modern game.
Шестикратным обладателем Кубка Стэнли, более 1300 матчей, более 1300 очков в НХЛ, Кленом Андерсоном.
My friend, Alexei Gusarov, is now the assistant general manager of SKA St. Petersburg, the KHL club. They sell out every game here, more than 12,000 people a night. There are sexy cheerleaders, a mascot, and mobs of rabid fans.
What do you see as a dream to play against the NHL or have the leagues combine and play for a world championship?
Maybe it's too far to create one competition which will cover both NHL and European hockey because it's too long distances. But why not to investigate, to experiment that, for example, to play at the beginning 60 games of several NHL clubs in with KHL clubs and vice versa, not to make exhibition games, but to count points.
What's happening here in St. Petersburg is what Medvedev is betting will happen all across Eastern Europe. We started out knowing nothing about each other. Enemies on the ice, Cold War opponents. We circled each other for decades, fascinated until the Titanic clash in 1972. The following decades taught each side how they could change their strategies in order to win, and we battled back and forth, giving little ground. But since the fall of the Soviet Union, Canadian and Russian hockey has drifted closer and closer together. We adapted to their technical and disciplined game, their innovations in training, while they found how passion can push you to victory. I've learned that the brotherhood of hockey draws us ever closer together. My journey revisited the rivalry over the past 65 years, a competitive relationship that has defined us as nations. And it is this bond that is at the core of who we are, who I am as a hockey player.